Car crashes can leave you with PTSD that might be very hard to recover from. Some never get behind the wheel again after their experience. Cycling accidents may appear minor in comparison, but they're just as serious, if not more so. And we've compiled a list of cycling pros that would agree with our statement. Stay tuned as we discuss cycling crash victims who were never the same. First up, Egan Bernal. Egan Bernal's terrible crash at the start of 2022 was a stark reminder of how deadly professional cycling can be. 2 weeks after he was discharged from the hospital, Bernal sat down with Colombian magazine Semana for an interview. The morning of the bus accident, he and his teammates, along with the team doctor, mechanic, and the Colombian's personal masseuse, were staying at a hotel. On this training trip, most of the other riders chose to ride road bikes, but Bernal and another rider chose time trials and the extremely aggressive stance that comes with them. He was doing an interval ahead of his friends, and there was a car behind escorting him. He remembers looking ahead and seeing nothing. While keeping an eye on how fast he was going on his interval, he finally reached around 62 kilometers per hour before he crashed into the bus. Due to the severity of his injuries, which included a collapsed lung and 11 broken ribs, he was understandably out of the race, and it was a good thing that his support car came so quickly to help. After being taken to the hospital, he underwent surgery to stabilize his injuries. Neurosurgeon Dr. Gustavo Uriza said that it was a miracle that he managed to make it to the clinic alive, but it was a relief to know that the operation performed on his spine went well, and just 8 months later he returned to racing in the Tour of Denmark. Rest assured that this traumatic experience will always stay with Bernal, and he probably will stay away from training on public streets. Following up, Josiba Baloki. It was stage 9 of the 2003 Tour de France, and Georg Jaski of the powerful Once squadron was out front by himself, comfortably ahead of the pack and seemingly on his way to win in gap. Jaski's boss at Once, Manolo Saiz, instructed Josiba Baloki, who finished second overall in the Tour de France in 2002, to lead the charge back at the front of the pack. Josiba, who was second on the team, agreed to the attack, just 40 seconds behind Lance Armstrong. But Baloki's move sparked a counterattack from Alexander Vinokurov, who was 37 seconds behind Baloki. The next thing fans saw on TV was Once drilling it to cut into the Kazakhs' lead, but this time with one of their own teammates in charge. In this scene, Jaski was tasked with chasing after Baloki after Saiz told him to sit up and wait. Baloki took a lot of risks on the Côte de la Rochette's drop into gap, ignoring Jaski's warnings to be careful. The Basque, unfortunately, ignored Jaski's advice and continued on, eventually losing control and falling heavily. Even with Lance Armstrong's impressive cyclocross talents, the Once guy was injured severely, breaking his femur in 2 places. Even though he returned to the Tour in 2004, his days as a serious contender were over, and he never again achieved a notable result. With his name linked to the Puerto Rico debacle, he was forced to withdraw from the 2006 Tour, effectively ending his career. Moving on, Chris Froome. With his 4 Tour victories, 2 Vuelta victories, and 1 Giro victory, Froome joins the likes of Jacques Anquetil, Felice Gimondi, Eddy Merckx, Bernard Hinault, Alberto Contador, and Vincenzo Nibali as the only riders to win all 3 of the world's most prestigious stage races. On his low pro bike, he was warming up for stage 4 of the Tour de France by racing in the Dauphiné in 2019, a race he's won 3 times. With the goal of becoming the first cyclist to win 5 consecutive Tour de France, he took his hands off the bars on a descent to blow his nose, but a freak gust of wind caught him, and he ended up smashing into a low wall. Dr. Richard Usher of the Ineos team said that Chris's first tests at Rouen Hospital showed that he had many injuries, including a broken right femur and right elbow. As a result, he suffered some rib fractures. He missed out on the Dauphiné in 2019 due to the accident. Even though since then he has struggled with rehab and recovery, the player has been consistent in getting back to his original form. Unfortunately, he suffered another setback when he tested positive for COVID-19 before he even got the chance to finish his Tour de France in 2022. He then took part in the Vuelta a España 2022, but failed to gain even 1 victory. It's awful how one bad decision can impact your future so heavily, but we applaud Froome for still remaining confident and working hard to get back to the top. Next up, Fabio Jacobsen. While in rehab, Jacobsen shared his thoughts and experiences with the Dutch publication AD about the crash. Dylan Groenewegen of Jumbo-Visma got in the way of the Dutch rider during the first stage sprint. This caused him to crash into the barriers and an official. According to Jacobsen, the quick efforts of others around him likely saved his life. Florian, one of his teammates, put his bike on the fence and ran to help. Between the fallen barriers, he noticed him laying on the tarmac with his blood splattered in every direction. When Florian realized he was nearly suffocating on his own blood, he instinctively moved his head a bit to allow the blood to drain from his mouth and throat. However, the UCI official he crashed into was probably the main reason he was saved from the worst of it. Jacobsen said that the official was filming from behind a barrier and basically acted as a shock absorber. The UCI employee did end up with several broken ribs, but he was otherwise fine. The athlete was seriously badly hurt. He had a brain contusion, his skull fractured, his nose broken, and his palate broken and torn. He also lost 10 teeth and parts of his upper and lower jaws in the process. His entire face was covered in cuts. Fabio was put into a coma and had to go through several surgeries to fix his injuries, as well as extensive dental reconstruction work for his teeth. He went on to win the second stage of his Tour de France debut in a sprint finish in 2022, followed by Laurent Jalabert. At the 1994 Tour de France, after 6 hours of relative calm, the first stage ended in turmoil when a police officer on the course provoked a crash that left 4 riders bloodied and sprawled on the ground. Tour officials say that the officer was taking pictures of the race as the top sprinters ran the last 150 meters to the finish line. A Belgian rider for the Novemail team, Wilfried Nielsen, was about to crash into him as he stood just far enough away from the crowd barricade to be in his way. Nielsen slammed into the gendarme at a speed of roughly 70 kilometers per hour, sending them both tumbling to the ground. The Frenchman Laurent Jalabert of Once, the Italian Fabiano Fontanelli of ZG Mobili, and the Ukrainian Alexander Gonchenkov of Lampre all came crashing down on top of the Belgian. Jalabert was the most injured of the bunch. Doctors reported he had several damaged teeth, shattered cheeks, and a broken collarbone. Jalabert changed the way he raced after he got better, and as a promise to his wife, he stopped doing crazy bunch sprints. He was able to reinvent himself to the point where he was able to win the Vuelta, the Tour de France mountain classification twice, and the World Championship time trial. He won many classic races such as Milan-San Remo, Flèche Wallonne, and the Tour of Lombardy. He also won stage races at Paris-Nice 3 times and the 1995 Vuelta a España. Jalabert retired at the end of the 2002 season. Moving on to Eddy Merckx. In 2021, the now defunct Pro Cycling magazine published a list of the cyclists who'd won 3 or more of the Big 9 major events around the globe. These included the 3 Grand Tours, the 5 Monuments, and the Worlds. The only people to accomplish this were Merckx, Fausto Coppi, Rick Van Looy, Bernard Hinault, Stefan Roche, Tim Boonen, and Tadej Pogacar. Merckx accomplished this feat no less than 7 times, and 6 of those times were after 1969. But he claimed that his crash at the Pierre Tessier Velodrome in Blois, France, in September 1969 changed him forever and that he has never been the same rider since. It was a Derny race, and he and his pacer, Fernand Wamst, were involved in a crash when another Derny fell down in front of them. Wamst was killed instantly, and Merckx was left with a twisted pelvis and head and spinal injuries. After that, he was never able to settle into a comfortable riding position, which is why he was always making small adjustments. As the man himself claims, he'd have won more Tour de France if it weren't for what happened on that fateful day. Finally, Roger Riviere. The Frenchman was a true legend. He won the World Professional Pursuit 3 times. He was the first man to break 6 minutes for 5,000 meters, and he held the world hour record twice. He won 3 stages and was a strong contender for the overall victory in the 1960 Tour de France. If he could just hold off Italy's tough as nails, Gaston Nencini, in the 19th stage's 83-kilometer time trial. Stage 14 saw Riviere trying to keep up with the demon descender Nencini on the drop-off the Col de Pergeret, but he fell into a ravine and broke his back, effectively ending his career. Medical and nutritional examinations of Riviere's body turned up evidence of drug usage, leading many to speculate that Roger's inability to apply the brakes was the result of his being high on palfium or another hallucinogen, but no one knows for sure. Even though he couldn't race again after his victory, it was said that he could have if he hadn't cashed in on a big insurance payout. That's a wrap for this video. Let us know in the comments. Did you like our list of the cycling crash victims who were never the same again? Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.